Georgia men's basketball 14-4, 2-3 in SEC play, heading to Fayetteville tonight to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. See if they can even up that conference record. Welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports. I'm JJ Jurjevich. Joining me tonight's the whole gang. Wayne in Memphis, Larry in Adairsville, Todd in the Woodstock area. And you can catch us all at ATL Prime Sports. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, of course, Apple and Spotify. Personal X's at JJ Get You One for myself, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, at Corder Todd for TC Todd Corder, and at LG for Real Though for Larry Gardner, your PA voice, the Rome Emperors. Wayne, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. You know, we've got some once again, the Memphis basketball has turned into the enigma. We lost a game up in Temple, and then we won against the Charlotte 49ers. And tomorrow we will be playing the Shockers, the Wichita State Shockers here at home. So I will be at that game and cheering them on. And anybody that doesn't know what a shocker is, you'll have to look that up. It's got nothing to do with electricity.
Todd, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing fantastic. You guys know it's going to be Philadelphia and Washington for the right to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC, and they had a rally. And, of course, the mayor of Philadelphia spelled Eagles, E-L-G-S-I-S. Her last name is Parker. I hope the Eagles play better than she can spell, and I'm hoping the Falcons, the mayor of Atlanta can spell Falcons. Goodness gracious, how do these people get these positions? I'll never know.
That was pretty funny. I saw that video there. Larry, thanks for joining us this evening, man. Good to have you back 2 weeks in a row. Thanks for holding it down last week. How you doing, buddy?
Man, everything is well up here in Northwest Georgia. No complaints. Family is doing good. Glad we didn't get any snow this time around from all the weather that happened and all the people that are on the beach with I would have never thought in a million years I'd have saw Pineapple Willies with 6 inches of snow, but here we are. But everybody's doing well up in our parts, man. Thank you for asking. JJ, what about you, man? How you doing?
Man, appreciate it. I'm doing well. Not as well as the newest members of Cooperstown, though. Outfielder Ichiro Suzuki, starting pitcher CC Sabathia, and former Atlanta Brave and reliever Billy Wagner are your three players that made the Hall of Fame. Wagner was on the ballot for the final time. Sabathia and Suzuki were first ballot Hall of Famers. Hats off to three really good baseball careers. What's on tap for today? Will Mcfadden, senior editor and staff writer for the Atlanta Falcons. Do the Braves need to make a move? And we preview the NFC and the AFC championship and some over-under bets in our Pick Six this week. And without further ado, the newest senior editor and staff writer for the Atlanta Falcons, Will Mcfadden, joins the show to talk all things Falcons. Will, thanks for coming on, man. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, JJ. It's great to be back on with you guys. And Todd, that's hilarious about the Eagles mayor. It reminds me of the Miami mayor when I guess they were introducing Dwayne Wade and she called him Wade Jones. So, yeah, we got to keep mayors away from the microphone and sports teams. That's my take.
Hey, you know what, Will? We'll just call you after Ohio State won the national title because JJ kind of stole it there. I don't know if you caught it, but we can call you the senior editor and staff writer for the Atlanta Falcons. How's that?
I love it. I appreciate it. It means a lot.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into the question of the night, and mine is still the quarterback position. I can't believe that the Falcons will keep them and Kirk Cousins and not cut him. But one thing came to me, maybe they will keep him, and just in case the starter, in case he gets hurt, and you have a reliable backup, you're going to pay him. You might as well play. You might as well keep Cousins, and because they don't want to sit here and pay him for somebody else to play him. It's just an amazing scenario that the front office came out and at first said, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to release him most likely. Now the possibility is to keep him. I find the quarterback situation a fascinating story. And between Penix and Cousins, maybe this third thing will happen. Maybe they'll actually have a quarterback competition in camp. What are your thoughts on all that stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question, and all of it is, interesting how they got here. But again, like when you look at what the expectation was, I don't think it was wrong to necessarily bet on Kirk Cousins at the time when he hit free agency. He was Pro Football Focus's number 2 free agent in that class, right? He was ahead of Baker Mayfield. He was ahead of, Sam Darnold, any of the guys that were out there. And they needed to get the quarterback position right. So that was kind of the going cost for Kirk. In hindsight, they've maintained all year long that he wasn't banged up, that his Achilles injury, wasn't an issue. But I do think something that ultimately led to the worst year, I think, of Kirk Cousins' career, I think it's fair to say that, was the lack of movement within the offense from the quarterback position. They weren't able to move him outside of the pocket. He wasn't really overly mobile in the pocket. And so I think about halfway through the season, defenses just started saying, okay, we don't have to worry about a play action game. We don't have to worry about a mobile quarterback. We can just close in on these windows. And I think you saw much tighter throwing windows. So for all those reasons, I do think the move to Michael Penix had to happen. Now, where things are now, Terry Fontenot saying that there are no plans to release him, that they are very comfortable keeping Kirk Cousins on the roster. You look at the contract, and that right there is where all this starts, because it's financially prohibitive for them to make it cut. If they would cut him as a pre June 1st cut, it's going to cost them like $25 million against the cap. It's just not a feasible option. Now, you could do a post June 1 and move that money across 2 years, but that's also a dicey situation, and you don't want to continue to drag out this kind of financial burden. So, like you said, good teams that have playoff aspirations like the Falcons do right now, they need a quality backup quarterback. That is kind of where I think you're seeing the NFL go, is these teams that want to compete, they're going to need a strong number 1, and they're going to need a very capable number 2. And that's where, based on what he showed this season after he was benched, he said all the right things. I was there at his press conference after he was benched. I mean, I kind of came away very impressed with just his demeanor, his maturity. Just, he got it. He was like, I didn't forget how to play quarterback, but ultimately you can't play the way that I was. And then the final part of this is Michael Penix Jr. You say a quarterback competition, man, the way that MPJ played those last 3 games, I am excited for this dude. He showed so many, especially that last game against Carolina, but think back to late in the game against Washington, that final drive on 4th down, that drive or that series starts with the ball going over John Robinson's head. That was as tough a spot as you could be. He came through. He's nailed. He's got so much it factor to me. Again, only a 3-game sample size, so it's small, but I'm kind of, from the quarterback position, we'll see what happens with Kirk. I think they will still maybe try to pursue a trade. They'll obviously have to get his consent on that. But as far as I'm concerned, Michael Penix Jr. is the quarterback. We pretty much heard Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris say that in their end-of-year press conferences. I would look at number 9 as the quarterback moving forward here, and we'll see what happens with Kirk.
Well, the chances of them trading them are really small because of the contract. They'd have to eat a lot of money.
They would, but again, it's something that you can negotiate as part of that trade, and it's better than kind of the alternatives, right? Again, I think that the backstop for all of this is that Kirk Cousins is still on the roster. That's going to be, again, a weird situation, but given the way that he handled everything, I think you feel a little bit more comfortable with that. Again, it's not ideal, but I kind of think that Terry Fontenot drew a little bit of a line in the sand to the other 31 teams around the league, saying, hey, look, if you want Kirk Cousins, you're going to have to come through us. And Kirk, if you want to start as a quarterback, we're not just going to let you hit the open market again. So it's going to have to be a little bit of a negotiation. All parties are going to have to come together to work towards this. if you want to start and if another team wants you as a starter, that's kind of how it's going to play out.
You're listening to Will Mcfadden right here on ATL Prime Sports. You can catch Will on X at Will McFadden. Will, I want to talk about the new defensive coordinator. Was under Dan Quinn's staff here a couple years ago, and now he's back around. I know Coach Raw and Arthur Blank like familiarity within the coaching staff. Your thoughts on the new defensive coordinator hire with head coaching experience as the former intern for the Jets?
Yeah, it's I've seen kind of all of the reaction to this, and honestly, it's not dissimilar to where we were a year ago when Raheem was hired. Right? You had a strong portion of the fan base saying this is more of the same. Why do we want Raheem to come back? He was part of that Dan Quinn era where, yes, there was an extremely high and a trip to the Super Bowl, but afterwards, it just felt like this team had a little bit of a not like funk about them, right? They just needed some fresh blood, some kind of difference. It got stale, I guess is the best way to put it. And you had another part of the fan base that said, hey, look, what he did in LA showed that he still got it. What he did in Atlanta here as wide receivers coach, I mean, they were so prolific there. And then when Dan Quinn was ultimately let go and he assumed that interim head coaching position, they went, I think, 4-7 down that stretch with him. Again, I think it's a tough spot to be an interim head coach because all offseason you're building an identity, you're building a team, a culture, you've got a vision. And then all of a sudden that guy's gone. And now you have to kind of step into somebody else's shoes and almost continue to see their plan. And he put his own plan in place and he named Jeff Ulbrich his interim defensive coordinator. So I was there in the building too for that run, right? The last time I was there was 2017 through that 2020 season. So I know Jeff Ulbrich. In that sense, I'm a little biased because I love the dude. Like, I think from a personality standpoint and from a coaching standpoint, he is going to get and connect to the player like nobody else. He is a former player himself, 10 years in the league as a linebacker, so he can speak directly to that experience. He is just a very laid-back, kind of motivational guy who's never going to get too high or too low. Who's going to say the right thing. And then I think what we saw in New York was him being able to cut his teeth as a defensive coordinator away from that infrastructure that he really came up in Atlanta. And if you look at what the Jets defense did, and I know a lot of people are going to be quick to say, oh, that was all Robert Saleh, right? But again, I kind of think that just misunderstands really what the role of a head coach for an NFL team is. Sure, you can have a Bill Belichick type who is literally like his thumbprint is on every single thing that you do. But I don't think Robert Saleh was Bill Belichick, and I went back and read a lot of the stuff when he was first hired. He gave Jeff Ulbrich the play calling duties, right? And the defensive side of the ball was the only side of the ball that was working there in New York. That was a pretty interesting situation from an organization standpoint. And so, again, I just kind of think that it's a lot of people will say, yeah, when Robert Saleh was gone, that defense fell apart. I think another way to look at it is when their defensive coordinator suddenly had to become the head coach and in charge of all of it, of course the defense got a little bit worse, right? I used to be a writer. Now I'm an editor and I have a little bit more of a managerial role. I'm not as involved with the day-to-day writing and the day-to-day kind of nitty-gritty that I used to be as a writer. So I kind of can relate to that, and I think anybody who has had to make that kind of transition can. So if he's coming here to be the defensive coordinator, I think that he has done a heck of a job in that role. Again, I understand the other side of it, right? Raheem's bringing in guys he knows. Raheem, they need fresh blood, people to say you're doing this wrong, you need to do it this way, X, Y, and Z. But again, if this team wants to compete right now, which it does, having somebody with a lot of familiarity who knows immediately what this guy's asking for, how he's asking for it, what he means when he says this, that's going to be so invaluable. And that's kind of where I think ultimately the decision was made to bring in somebody with that familiarity who is from day one going to be able to hit the ground running, and they're going to be in lockstep.
Will, I got a question for you. This offense has been just absolutely prolific with Michael Penix Jr. at the helm. It's almost like the odd numbers on the offense are just ready to go 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. But the one odd man out on that is number 8, Kyle Pitts. Man, what do the Falcons do with Kyle Pitts? Because it seemed like him and Michael started to get a rhythm. You know, you talked about the last drive of the Washington game, but he had targeted him, I think, 4 or 5 times in that game. He targeted him several times during the Carolina game, and you started to see a little bit, and then they went away from him. Kyle's getting open. What do the Falcons do with the enigma that is Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I wish you could tell me, Larry. It's the great question that kind of continues to be the great question, unfortunately. And I think one of the things is when you look at now transitioning from 2 different coaching staffs with like 5 different quarterbacks, it feels like we've seen Desmond Ridder and Drake London develop amazing chemistry. We've seen Darnell Mooney and Kirk Cousins develop amazing chemistry. I'm just curious as to why none of these quarterbacks seem to lock on to Kyle Pitts as his guy, right? And it was really interesting. About midway through the season, Raheem was asked about Kyle Pitts, and he didn't want to blow too much out into this direct comparison, so I'm going to preface it by saying that is like, please, let's not take this and go crazy with it. But he said the player that he actually reminded him the most of was Deshaun Jackson, right? Because ultimately it's the explosive quality that Kyle Pitts brings. Like, that's what he brings to this offense. And there would be games where Deshaun Jackson would have 3 catches for 70 yards, and then there'd be a game where, he got 3 targets and he didn't have a catch. And obviously, Deshaun Jackson is in a different category from a career standpoint than Kyle Pitts. But really early on in the year, when it seemed like he was catching a few of those touchdowns off of like trip sets, when he was the outside man in that trip set to the right and was running a corner route and they could isolate him on a corner or a safety, I was like, I love that. Let's keep doing that every single game. Now, I'm sure teams adjusted or picked up on that or what have you, but that just went away. And I do think it's interesting now in hindsight, looking back, his most productive season was his rookie year, but he had a firmly established quarterback in Matt Ryan who I think could demand the best of him and hold him to the highest standard and basically say, I need you to be here and you better be there, right? Or you're not getting the ball. And there was a credibility that kind of came with that. Also at that time, like Kyle Pitts, outside of, Calvin Ridley for a few games and outside of Russell Gage, but he was banged up throughout that year, he was kind of their one option as a receiver. Now you've built that group out. And again, I kind of think it's easier for Kyle to get lost in the mix. And then also you've got a player like Charlie Warner, who is so valuable to this run game that, he was out there for a lot of the snaps. And, that's not necessarily an excuse. I'm just saying that it's like Kyle didn't earn his reps out there either. And you had somebody who's providing immense value in the run game, and the run game was aces for you this year. So yeah, it's a weird conundrum. Like the talent's clearly there. He's still young, so I don't know. You hope he figures it out, whether it's here in Atlanta or maybe it is somewhere else. I don't know. But the talent's there. It's been really curious as to why it hasn't been unlocked here in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being on the show, and congratulations on the advancement there working for the Atlanta Falcons organization. I don't know if that will get us any more inside information than you're allowed to tell. But one thing I am curious about, do you think the Falcons, being at 15 in the draft, will go defense or offense on that pick?
Yeah, I would say right now I'm pretty confident it would be defense. Again, you never know, right? Last year, I would have been the first person to tell you they're not taking, Michael Penix at 8, and they did. And right now, I love that pick in hindsight because I think Michael Penix is going to be that dude. But based on just the early scouting that I've done for this draft class and everybody that I've read, it seems like this draft far and away is defense heavy. I do think that there is a chance that the Falcons look at potentially trading down. They've only got, I believe, 5 picks in this year's draft. And you would obviously like to try to recoup some of that capital because their salary cap situation for free agency is not looking that great right now either. So you could be somewhat limited in how you're able to rebuild and reshape this roster this offseason for your staff's kind of second year working together and having a new defensive coordinator coming in. You'd like to be able to do maybe a little bit more than that. However, if they stick there at 15, I think they're going to be able to really get a solid defensive player. But given how deep this class seems to be, and I think that's going to be the key word you'll start hearing is depth more than front-end talent. I've read a couple of places that say there's maybe only like 12 to 14 real true like first-round blue-chip guys in this draft class. Now, obviously, that can change. We still have a long process ahead of us. But if the real meat of this class is in rounds like 2 through 4, and there are some years where that is the case, then maybe a move back, you try to stockpile a couple of those day 2 picks and add to your bunch there. That could be the wiser move as well. So, yeah, again, when it comes to the draft, you never say never. But at this point, I would lean towards the defense just given, kind of what Larry was just referring to. Like, you like your wide receiver setup. The offensive line has been, almost criminally underrated, not talked about as well as they have played the last couple of years. It's insane what they continue to do. Quarterback future looks bright. Your running backs are excellent. Like, I would say now is the year to look on the defensive side.
Well, Will, thanks for joining us. I know you're a busy man. We'll let you get. Listeners, you can catch Will at Will Mcfadden on X, and tell us how we can see all of your work. I guess AtlantaFalcons.com now, right?
Yes, sir. But you can also check out the Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network. We've got Dave Archer, Dave Rackley, and DJ Shockley on Falcons Audible, and then myself, Tori McElhaney, and Taryn Walk over on Falcons Final Whistle. So I'll be down at the Senior Bowl next week. Hope to, be able to talk to a few people, maybe get a podcast or two out of that. So yeah, stay tuned to the Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network as well, but check out AtlantaFalcons.com for all the coverage.
Thanks again, Will. Have yourself a wonderful week, and yet again, congratulations from us all here at ATL Prime Sports. New senior editor and staff writer for the Atlanta Falcons, man. We're proud of you.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely. Again, Will Mcfadden. Catch him on X at Will Mcfadden, and we'll talk to Will in the near future and get more insight on number 15 overall. Thanks again, Will. Guys, we moved from Will Mcfadden and the Atlanta Falcons over to Major League Baseball and the Atlanta Braves with this first spring training game under a month away. Are the Braves in need of a big-time signing? What should Alex Anthopoulos do? Larry, I'll start with you and mix it in, man. What do you see on the farm in Rome that could make its way up the pipeline quickly, man? So a two-parter for you to start it off.
No doubt, man. I'm going to tell you right now, if Alex doesn't do anything with pitching, he's got enough that can come up and participate in his toolbox that can really make some differences. We don't know what A.J. Smith-Shawver is going to be at. We don't know what Hurston Waldrop's going to be, but those are your 1 and 2s. Drew Hackenberg did an outstanding job in Double-A Mississippi. We'll get to see him again probably, I'd say, the first month in Columbus before he's at Gwinnett. Owen Murphy was having a lights-out season in Rome before he had to undergo Tommy John. You got young Carlos Lara, who is a flamethrower who will start in Columbus, and I appreciate him. He may stay 6 weeks there before they call him up to Gwinnett, topping out at 100, 102 miles an hour repetitively. So arms aren't the problem. They've got arms that can handle the absence or the departure of Max Fried to New York. The thing that you're going to have to find is you're going to have to find some depth to replace Travis d'Arnaud. You're going to have to find some kind of utility people or even a starter at short. And, that's the one thing most Braves fans want to see is they want to find somebody to replace Orlando Arcia. And I get it, but at the same time, his glove is valuable, and for those of us who grew up during the early ages of the Braves fandom in the 80s and the 90s, listen, nobody knew who Mark Lemke was. Nobody knew who Jeff Blauser was, but you could plug them in every day and they had value for a lineup where the big dogs could do their damages. You know, it also helps that you have 3 Hall of Famers headlining your starting lineup in the pitching rotation too, you know. But that being said, there's enough in the cupboard pitching wise to replace what was missing with the addition and the return of Spencer Strider. Now, do we know if Spencer's going to be 100%? We don't know, but he can he can plug in along with Chris Sale and along with Ronaldo Lopez, and you at least got your top 3. Now, we know what Swellenbach was able to do, and I saw him from Rome all the way up, and that was great. I think the biggest key for Atlanta is going to be getting bullpen depth, because you got to replace some bullpen arms, and you need some bench depth as well, because what Travis d'Arnaud brought coming off the bench for Sean Murphy, you can't even begin to explain and evaluate it, because he was so valuable as a leader. He was valuable as a backup catcher, but it was almost like having another manager, de facto manager in the clubhouse. So if he does nothing, he's got enough in his toolbox that can make the Braves competitive. It's just that you always want to be improving when you see everybody else that are spending money, like the Dodgers, and you see the Yankees, and you see the Mets, and you see people in your own division that are continuously improving. You can't just twiddle your thumbs and sit on your hands and not do anything, because the very definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Todd, your thoughts? Braves need to make a move, yay or nay?
Well, here's the situation. Whether you expect them to make a move or two, you would expect them to make a move most likely by a trade. There was talk about signing Max Scherzer. But they could have kept Morton for that kind of money. But to me, it seems like they're probably going to try to stay below that luxury tax and think about 2026 instead, because they don't want to go for a third time and then pay your increased fee, more fee. So they're not going to do it, because look, they're not going to go over this year because Acuna and Strider, with their injuries, I don't see either player being 100%. And by the time they do get them back, half the season's going to be over. So like Larry mentioned very well a few moments ago, they're going to rely on a lot of young guys. So there's going to be a lot of question marks about this ball club. I know that $24 million is what they're under the tax hole. That's really not a lot of money in today's game. So think about that. And they're gonna go in house, like I stated, and all this stuff should be able to keep them in the race in the NL East, keep the Truist Park gates flowing, keep the batteries business moving, and then 2026 maybe make a bigger move, because they've really lost a lot in this offseason. I know they made a deal with the Angels, but this is a club that has definitely lost more than they gained, and there is more uncertainty this year because you're going to have to rely on younger players than you had in the past. And one last thing, everybody's expecting this lineup to just come out and do what it did 2 years ago, not necessarily because last year was a down year, so they're all going to come back and hit. Well, not necessarily. There's a lot of ebbs and flows they may do in between. But the leadoff spot is something that I'm really curious about, because, look, this team doesn't steal a lot of bases. So a guy like Harris is going to have a career year for Atlanta, and I would definitely put him at the top of the order and get him moving and get him running.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't think the Braves need to make too many moves. I'm sure they will right before spring training gets going, before everybody reports. Knowing Alex Anthopoulos, I'm sure he will pull the trigger somehow, somewhere, some way. But I'm with you guys. Look, they got a young catcher that could potentially place d'Arnaud, and I think it's Drake Baldwin Big time slugger, big time bat, really pretty good behind the plate. He's got a good pop time, so they like him a lot. And remember, Chadwick Trump did very well in stretches last year, filling in for Darno and Murphy when they were both injured. So he got a lot of good doubles and RBIs and key situations early in that season last year. So Chadwick Trump is a guy that could really fill some voids. And I think we're all good. Look, when Strider comes back, you hope he's healthy. And same with Acuna, but you did pick up Brian De La Cruz to help out alleviate a little bit of the pressure that Acuna is going to put on the team at the beginning of the season, not being there. And I really like the lower tier rotation, the minor league guys that Larry has mentioned. And we can't forget Ian Anderson has shown that potential. He could be that fifth starter guy. Don't forget Spencer Swellenbach, who was a really good player last year. You got guys like Elder and just other guys that are around this organization that could come in and fill in and get some big-time innings. And again, don't forget that the Braves still have Chris Sale. Will he be able to be there the whole season like he was last year? Hopefully that's what Atlanta's paying for, and hopefully that's what they're getting out of Chris Sale again next year. So I like the top end of the rotation a lot. And when Strider comes back, if he's just 90% of himself, I think that'll be a pretty good rotation enough to get you to the postseason. Look, the Braves won 89 games last year and didn't have Strider or Acuna down the stretch and still somehow managed to get in the postseason. So I think with their lineup, Albies, a healthy Riley, and remember, folks, I don't think Sean Murphy was healthy at all last year. He tore that oblique pretty much, or not tore it, but hurt it pretty bad in day one, second at bat, maybe even first at bat. And wasn't right the rest of the year. Olsen the same way. I think you'll get a lot more production out of Matt Olsen this year. I don't see 2 bad years in a row. So I see this lineup getting better by just getting healthy and getting guys throughout the season. So we're all kind of on the same page there. But I'm like Todd. I'm not going to put it by Alex Anthopoulos to not make a move. Wayne, I know you don't have any comments, but your Rangers, man, we'll see if they put a smile on your face this year or something.
Well, I'm going to probably wait till a few games into the Cactus League before I decide anything on that, because you never know what things might change.
You never know. Guys, any quick final thoughts, Todd, Larry, on the Atlanta Braves? Move forward from Braves baseball, and we'll recap the college football season. It's over. Ohio State, it seems to be the theme tonight, wins the first 12-team playoff as they won the very first ever 4-team playoff. So a little bit of history repeating itself there. What are your thoughts on the college football playoff national championship game and the season that was? Let's start with Todd, man. Your thoughts on this season and the first true champion really in college football history.
You just said it. It's really the first true playoff champion. Think about it. We had writers, we had polls determining a champion. You would have the last one in 97 when Michigan and Nebraska had to split a title. And what sport from the high school level to the professional level do you have teams splitting championships other than Division I college football? I'll give you the answer. None. Then we went to the BCS where we had computers. Then we went to a 14 playoff, which was a 14 playoff privilege playoff where teams were selected. Now we actually have some criteria. We recognized conference champions. We took the top 12 teams in the country and got it going on. And you're right, JJ. You had Ohio State winning the whole thing at the beginning of the year. They did. I wasn't so sure, especially after the Michigan debacle, but they did. They came in a tournament, and they were definitely the best team. They beat 2 teams in the Sacred Ground Conference of the SEC, Texas and Tennessee, even though Texas really isn't an SEC team. They beat
both
their
UT.
Big Ten brother, Oregon, and they're not really a Big Ten team. And, of course, they beat Notre Dame, and they're not in a conference. But all these people complaining about a playoff, you finally got one. and now you're still complaining about a playoff. It was too long. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. Honestly, it was one of the best seasons in college football ever. The play on the field was as good as it ever gets. Now, there is one thing that needs to be changed. I think the season needs to end on January 1st. I think that's when the national championship game should be played. I think they should go to 16 teams. No conference championship game. And no bye, 16 teams, and get it on because they can't compete with the NFL. There's just too much going on. They need to end the season right around the 1st of January, incorporate the bowls.
Well said, Todd. Agree with you 100%. The first true national champion. We've talked about it off air. We talked about it with Tim Brando. If you stuck with this show for a long time, pure playoff privilege. The SEC did get some bias in there. The Big Ten got some bias in the 14 playoff selection. So, well said. I like the fact of what you said. Ended on New Year's Day. Call it quits by New Year's Day. If I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you got to start the season earlier, I guess you got to start the season earlier or cut down the conference championship games. I'm sure they'll figure out something. I agree with you on the seeding, but overall, what a great season. Georgia, if you're in Athens, you got to hang your head on an SEC championship, an unexpected one at that. You backed yourself in the doorway. Ended up, instead of thinking, we're hosting a playoff game, to get in the first round bye. So what a great season all around. Georgia Tech and Georgia went to 8 overtimes, and again, the play on the field was determined the championship, and I loved it. You could have a bad week. You can have a bad game, a la Ohio State versus Michigan, a la Georgia versus Ole Miss, and you can still find your way to win other important games and get yourself in position to win a championship. And that's the biggest takeaway I have from the season. It is the first true national champion, and it just so happens to be the team that won the first ever 14 playoff, and the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Now,
what a fabulous season.
JJ, one thing you said, and I want Larry and Wayne to chime in this too, is that look at Florida State. They went undefeated last year. They never had a chance to play for the title. There are teams that have won a championship with a backup quarterback. When there was the 4-team format back in 2014, Ohio State won it with their third string quarterback. We don't mean to take away the championship teams from the past for what those kids did and the coaches and et cetera. But, everybody's got to be able to have a shot. And with the 12-team playoff, most everybody has a shot. You even have a group of 5 team in there, like Boise State. And they gave Penn State a run. So it wasn't like they got embarrassed. So in what sport just because someone has an injury, do we disqualify them from the playoff? That would be like taking the Detroit Lions. Well, Jared Goff, he's injured. You can't play. You were 15-2, but we're going to disqualify you from the playoff. This is lunacy, and the folks that are complaining online need to stop it. Yes, there's things that need to improve. But to sit here and say this is ludicrous.
Yeah, it's anybody complaining about Ohio State not winning a conference, get a break. That's the playoffs. That's how it goes. It's how the cookie crumbles. They were still one of the top 12 teams in terms of seeding by the College Football Playoff Committee. Well done. I think they did a wonderful job all year. They put the right teams in. I think there may have been 1 or 2 that probably did deserve it, but I think SMU deserved it just as much as anybody else with a great season and a great showing in their new conference, going from G5 to Power 5, and I think they were rewarded nicely. It was good to see Oregon and some of these new schools and new conferences get the conference crown. That was pretty cool. Arizona State was able to do it in the Big 12 in their first year, and obviously Texas had the shot. Oregon had the shot. It was very fun to watch. Larry, your thoughts on this year's College Football Playoff National Championship game and the season that was?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of the college football playoff expanding to where it is was so that you could draw a March Madness type of feel. And they were able to do that because you had teams from all over the country that were all in it. So you had people from Oregon, you had people from Idaho, you had people from Texas, you had Ohio, you had the Georgia, you had all over the place. You had people that were invested in this playoff. And it's just like, and I use this example all the time. I can't get mad if a 16 seed come March upsets a number 1 seed. It just adds to it more often than not. When they make it to the next round in the 32 frame, they get drilled. You don't see it happen to where you get the Wichita State Shockers that go all the way down and eventually make it to a Final Four, or the team from Chicago with the very elderly lady that's supposed to be one of the team mascots. I can't call them what it is off the top of my head at this
Sister
time.
Jean.
Yeah, Sister Jean.
Chicago Loyola.
There you go. Yep. You see what I mean? So, everybody's going to root for the underdog, but the one thing, like TC said to begin with, nobody could choose who won it but the players on the field. And as a side note to that, the boosters that pay the NIL. Because that's basically what you're at now, is whoever can pay the most money to field the best roster will compete for a national title. It's point blank, period. Recruiting is no more about getting the most talented high school athletes anymore. It is getting the best bang for your buck for whatever amount of NIL it's going to take. And what's going to happen now is you're going to have the haves and the have-nots. The schools that have the boosters and the corporate sponsor backings that can fund this NIL are the teams that you're going to see show up in this 12-team college playoff. Overall, it's a wonderful, wonderful season. We enjoyed it from August to January. Now it's time to take a look at what's about to happen with the second National Signing Day and turn around and blink. And with these transfer portal moves, Miami's looking at Carson Beck. And I'm like, y'all Georgia fans have to tell me about what I'm about to expect. But that being the case, man, it's the saga and the drama will continue to be year long with college football, not only because of the playoff, but because of the portal and because of the NIL.
No, Larry, I want to add something with the NIL and the portal. You added it. The NIL, like you said, show the money. But all these schools, they're going to have to raise the money to pay these players. That's just how it is now to the transfer portal. This, to me, is the biggest problem. It really needs to be fixed. It's the wild, wild west. You have kids. Penn State didn't have a backup quarterback in the playoff. Their backup was transferred out. Say their starter got hurt, you're down to a third-string guy. That would be like having NFL free agency during the playoffs. The lunacy of this transfer portal. You can do this at Division II level. I broadcast college basketball at the D2 level. JJ and I do it at the D2 level in college football, and I am doing some Division I college basketball also this year on a fill-in basis for Jacksonville University. But this portal needs to be set once a year. These kids should only be able to transfer one time within their first 4 years. If you go to graduate school and you graduate, then yes, you can transfer again. But you shouldn't be able to transfer every year or have these several periods of time where you're able to transfer. That's got to stop.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. The transfer portal's got to get under control. Either have it to where it's in the off season and it's opened up for a 4 or 5 week period, and that's your one-time transfer portal, or however it goes. Someone with the powers that are above Atlanta Prime Sports is going to have to figure out that one, because we're all in agreement. You got to figure out the transfer portal and make it so kids aren't having to make that decision, because you mentioned the backup quarterback from Penn State, and unfortunately I'm blanking on the young man's name. Pretty good guy, Penn State guy all the way through, James Franklin says. And it pained him to have to make this decision because he had to do it before a certain date which if Penn State won, they wouldn't have, he wouldn't have been able to put his name in the transfer portal, and it just puts pressure on these athletes that necessarily doesn't need to happen. So we're all in agreement there. Wayne, let's get your thoughts on the season that was in the college football playoff national championship game. I enjoyed the game. Real quick, that's my comment on that. What a great game. Notre Dame, hats off to Coach Freeman for not giving up and getting his guys rallied at the end of it. Your thoughts on the season that was, Wayne?
Well, I enjoyed the season. Memphis had a pretty good season and won their bowl game and wrapped up everything before Christmas, so I appreciate that. Ohio State winning the game, championship game, was not that big of a deal to me. My mom and my stepdad were pulling for Ohio State, and my dad and my stepmom were pulling for Notre Dame, and I was hoping for a Texas-Georgia rematch, so I watched the game just because it was a championship game.
As so did many people, and it helped that it was right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Great crowd, and Atlanta does yet another wonderful job of knocking an event out of the stadium. And the first ever 12-team playoff hoisted right here in Atlanta, the heartbeat of college football, home of the College Football Hall of Fame. So, yeah, what a great season, guys. Any final thoughts real quick on college football before we get into the famous Pick Six? I think we're all good, guys. What a great season. My final thought on it will be Mike Leach would be extremely happy right now. And we all remember that rant. Well, what do they do down at Pee Wee? Well, they have the best 6 teams in county, and they play. That's one of the best sound bites ever. So, he's happy. Rest in peace, Coach Leach. All right, guys, our Pick Six. Wayne went 5-1 last week, moving to 65, 54-1. 3 games behind our leader, Larry, who's 68, 51-1 after a 3-3 week last week. Todd and I went the exact same all the way down, so we went 4-2, moving Todd to 64, 55-1, and moving myself to 1 game under 500 at 59, 60-1, coming in the rear, as I have been pretty much the whole season. We are doing the Pick Six. We picked the AFC and NFC championships, total for each game, and the passing totals for Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen. Spreads and totals are from Wednesday morning per ESPNBet.com. The NFC championship, Sunday, 3 o'clock p.m. I have it on ESPN, but I don't think that's right. I'm pretty sure it's Fox. You'll get the old Tom Brady crew. Commanders, 12-5 regular season. Eagles, 14-3, your NFC East champs. A divisional battle here. Philadelphia's 6-point favorites. And this is per Fox Sports, guys. This is pretty interesting stuff. The last 4 times there has been a divisional rematch in a conference title game, the winner has gone on to win the Super Bowl. So the Rams beat the Niners in 21, Seahawks over the 49ers in 13, Packers beat the Bears in 2010, and the Steelers beat the Ravens in 2008. So I thought that was a pretty interesting stat. Wayne, let's start it off, buddy, with you. Who you got in this game? Do the Commanders, you taking the points with the Commanders, or you giving the points with the Eagles?
Philadelphia Eagles is who I'm picking.
ELGLES, right?
All of it. All the letters. I'll take them all.
No, it's ELGSES.
Yeah.
Whatever it was terrible. Todd, what you got?
Well, I can actually spell it. It is EAGLES for the mayor of Philadelphia. Duh. Here's a stat for you. The last 19 quarterbacks who've lost their first Super Bowl start haven't been back for a second start. The last to do it was... Can someone answer that?
I think
the last 19 quarterbacks.
The answer to that I remember
haven't been back for a second start. The last to do it was who?
John Elway?
No, but you're getting warm. Larry, I bet you know.
I'm just running down in my head. I'm like, they didn't make it back for a second opportunity.
He's got it the right era, John Elway.
Yeah, I want to say Dan Marino.
No, you're damn close. You're in the right division. It's
Jim Kelly?
Yeah,
Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly. I said, who
Yeah,
lost
he
four
lost
straight.
4 of them.
Jalen Hurts could break that drought with a win on Sunday against, I refuse to say their last name, it will be Washington. Now, on that, I think Jalen Hurts breaks that. They win they cover, they win the game, and not because of Jalen Hurts, because who I believe should be the MVP of the NFL this season, Saquon Barkley, their running back who went to Penn State.
So you're taking the Eagles, Wayne. TC's taking the Eagles to cover. Larry, what say you? You taking the Eagles to cover, or are you taking the Commanders and the points?
I'm taking the Commanders and the points. They've
He
already.
believes in Daniels.
Oh, do I ever believe in Jaden Daniels? And I'm going to tell you why. I watched what he did to Atlanta. I watched what he did to Detroit. Detroit's defense, and I hate it, TC, I'm sorry, but Detroit's defense is a whole lot better than the Georgia Eagle defense. Okay? And not only that, the one element that he continues to bring, I think Dan Quinn has figured out what he did wrong with Atlanta, and I think he is utilizing those mistakes to train this young man up as a rookie who is already fearless. And he is going to say, Jaden, anything within 4 yards or under, go get me a first down. And what that does is that continues to move the chains. And Saquon can't be Saquon if he on the sideline looking at them boys continue to get first down after first down. And that's exactly what they did in Detroit. They literally could not keep them off the field. And then it became a shootout. So
you know what, Barry? Can I say something on that? You made an excellent point there, if I may. But Detroit also did a poor job of sticking with the run, and that's what hurt them. There was a play that was 3rd and 1 on the 17 of Washington. Detroit was up 7-3. They decided to go 5 wide, and they let Jared Goff, who isn't mobile, and he was a sitting duck. When they blitzed one more person that they could block, he fumbled the ball, and that changed the game. I don't see Philadelphia doing that kind of stupid, cute stuff in this game. But you're right, though. Washington did a great job, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, did a great job of moving the chains.
No, and that's, to me, in the playoffs, especially with what's at stake here, is if you can convert third downs, you give yourself a shot. And Jaden's already played these guys twice. He's not been intimidated either time. The last time they played, and you had to catch me if I'm wrong, JJ, but I think he went over 100 yards rushing in the second time that they played each other.
He did.
Now, when you've got that aspect in the backfield, it prevents your defense from selling out and blitzing 100%, because if you miss it, then now you turn him into a runner, and what should have been probably a 3 to 5 yard loss turns into a 15, 16 yard gain. And a long story short, I could go into a whole bunch of other things, but give me the Commanders. I believe Philadelphia's going to win. I just don't believe they're going to win by that spread.
Yeah, I think it was a tough spread for me, but I'm with Todd. The difference to me is Saquon Barkley. Washington's defense is giving up a porous 7.2 yards per play this postseason. That doesn't fare well for the second best rushing offense in the NFL behind Hurts and Barkley there. And neither team has turned the ball over this postseason. So whoever wins that battle might win this game. And I think Eagles will find a way to pick off Jalen Hurts once or twice. And I think that might be the difference in the ballgame. So I am taking the EAGLES to cover. The over-under in that game is 47.5. The NFC Championship game, again, over-under 47.5. Wayne, what say you, over or under in that game?
I'm going to pick the over.
NFC over.
Over. I'm expecting a lot from Philadelphia on this one, not just passing but rushing as well.
Yeah, I like the over in that one as well. I think Daniels and McLaurin will connect for a touchdown. I think throw in a Robinson rushing TD in there as well. And I'm thinking Hurts and Barkley, they're both going to get in the end zone at least once. So I see a 31-24 type game here that gets me the cover with the Eagles. That gets me the over right there with 55 points there. 50, yeah, so I like the over as well. Larry, what say you?
I like the over too, but I think it's going to be Philadelphia 28, Washington 24.
I like it. TC, what you got? Over or under on this game?
I have the over as well, and when I go to the casino this weekend, I'll have the over as well.
Yeah, that's a good bet. I think we all agree. I think the Commanders will be able to score here, and we will go all in agreement on the NFC Championship over. The prop bet we're betting this week, over under 224.5 passing yards for Washington quarterback Jalen Daniels. I'll go with the over. Daniels has passed for 268, 299 yards in his playoff run this far. If that number is not higher than 225, Washington loses this game by a long shot. And I do think in order for it to be close, he's going to have to be accurate with the football as he's been all postseason long. 69.7 completion percentage, 567 yards, 4 TDs, and again, no turnovers. 4 TDs, 0 interceptions. Daniels has elevated his QBR 16 points this postseason from the regular season. So I'm going with the over on that category as well. Wayne, are you keeping your under on this?
I am keeping my under on this.
Daniels under the 224.5 mark. Larry, what say you? Over or under 224.5 passing yards for Jaden Daniels?
Under. I believe he's going to be about 195, and I think he's going to run for about another 145. I think he's going to be over 100 yards literally on the ground, but I think he's going to be right at that 200-yard mark. I think it's going to be like realistically about a 200, 205, and about 125 on the splits. And I think he's going to throw for a touchdown, and he's going to run for one.
So Daniels under for Wayne, Daniels under for Larry. I got Daniels in the over. Todd, what you got?
I have it over too. He's averaged 284 yards throwing the ball, passing yards in these first 2 playoff games. I see him throwing over 224 in this one, and I see it a high-scoring gig.
Our fourth pick of the pick six. It's the AFC Championship game Sunday night, 6:30 p.m. on the old CBS. The 13-4 regular season Bills travel to Arrowhead Stadium to take on the number 1 seed and the 14-3 Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City's 2-point favorites. Wayne, what say you? Are you taking the points with the Bills, or are you giving the points with Kansas City?
Points in the Bills. Points in the Bills. I just don't think I can pull for Kansas City. There's too much hype.
Not pulling. Who you think's going to do it?
Well, that's
Todd,
okay.
Are you sticking with the don't press send and don't bet against Mahomes?
Buffalo Bills are not going to the Super Bowl. Oh, yeah, that was their song, the other one. That you damn straight I am. Don't press in. Don't bet against the best quarterback in the NFL and Patrick Mahomes. Buffalo's not going to the Super Bowl, and Mahomes always figures out how to win. He's this generation's Tom Brady. It's
Larry,
like
what you got?
Crying about, we're not getting the Kansas City gets all the calls. Yeah,
no doubt
2
about
or
it.
3 egregious calls in that game. But you know what? Good teams overcome that stuff, and the Texans were not good enough. Kansas City just knows how to win. They have the best defense in the NFL, and defense wins championships too.
Larry, what you got?
Yeah, man, if this game was in Buffalo, I would take the Bills. But at Arrowhead, ain't no way, man. Kansas City going to handle business. You know, I feel bad with Josh Allen because he's had a MVP caliber season. He probably won't win it, but this got to be the most frustrating position in the arms of humanity to be a Buffalo Bills starting quarterback and have to go through this year after year after year. I'm sorry, Bills Mafia. Y'all just ain't going to get it done. Mahomes magic rules again. Give me Kansas City, baby. They're going to handle business.
Boy, Josh Allen has a weird knack of winning at Arrowhead.
On the
Just
playoffs.
somehow, some way, he's done it a couple times out there. Did it earlier in the season, put 30 points up on the board. The Chiefs, they've won 16 straight one-score games. That's dating back to last season. Just some cool, quick stats for both teams. Bills quarterback Josh Allen became the second player in NFL history to accumulate 40 or more touchdowns in 5 or more seasons. The only other player to do that is Aaron Rodgers. The Bills have the ability to run the ball, unlike previous seasons, and this is why I started leaning towards the Buffalo Bills, because no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. And they have the ability to run the ball much better this year than in previous years with James Cook, who was tied in the NFL with 16 rushing touchdowns, and that was tied for first in the NFL in that category. Look, Buffalo doesn't turn the ball over very often. 8 turnovers. 8 turnovers all season for the Bills, the fewest since 1990 in a season, and they played an extra game than that. The Bills were plus 24 in the turnover margin. Kansas City has been prone to turn the ball over. They fumbled a couple times last week. They were able to get back on it. I see a shootout in this one. Bills in the points. I think Buffalo wins it outright. I think Bills to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1994. This team won a game last week, which if the coach goes for one in the third quarter, and then they don't have to worry about a Mark Andrews drop. They might have to worry about a Justin Tucker miss, though. But this team has been resilient this year, and I do think, I've said this before, nothing against Stephon Diggs, but I think sometimes the ball was forced to Stephon Diggs in certain times of the game last year that put pressure on this Bills offense. They no longer have Stephon Diggs on the outside. They have guys like Shakur. They have Mac Hollins, who's coming to work barefoot in snow with Fred Flintstone gear on and Buffalo Bills gear on. And I just like the team camaraderie. I like Josh Allen. I think he's got the players supporting him. I think they're ready to go into Arrowhead and go to the Super Bowl for the first time in 30 years. I want to see it happen. I may be betting with my heart a little bit on this one. I will have to admit that because the Bills are probably my second favorite team because of Jim Kelly. But I'm taking the Bills and the points on this one. They've played well in the underdog role all year, and that goes for everybody. So 2 for the Bills, 2 for the Chiefs. The over-under in that game is 47.5. Again, AFC Championship over-under 47.5. I am going with the over in this one as well. 51 total points scored back in November. Over 620 yards in that game. I see a shootout in this one. Whoever has the ball last wins. I wouldn't expect anything less than overtime in this one, folks. I think the overtime rules are created for a game like this. Remember the last time these two teams played in the playoffs, it's the reason this rule was invented. Josh Allen didn't get the football back. He gets the football back in a game like this, and I think they win the game. That was a long-winded answer. Wayne's going Bills. Larry is going Chiefs. Cover. What you guys got on the over-under here in the AFC Championship game, Wayne?
I'm going to go over on this one, and I'm kind of curious as to why both games over-under is 47.5. Are people getting sleepy out in Vegas or something?
TC, what you got over-under in this AFC Championship game?
Under the regular season is nothing like the playoffs. Kansas City's defense will make it a lower scoring game. No, under. This is under, and I think it's the easiest call of all of them.
Larry, what you got?
My heart says under, but I'm going to go with the over. And I think just the complete opposite to TC's point, it is right, but I just watched 2 teams play in the snow and score over 50 points in just terrible conditions. And, if a coach had some sense, Baltimore would probably be playing this game instead of Buffalo, but that's neither here nor there. I don't foresee snow in the forecast for this game. So it's just going to be super cold, which ain't nothing new to both of them teams this time of year. So I think they'll be able to play. Andy Reid will have the whole playbook available to him. I know Josh Allen is going to turn into the second coming of Dan Marino and just throw the ball everywhere. I just think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think you're looking at maybe 31-20, 31-28, maybe even 34-28. But
I agree. I think it's going to be whoever has the ball last wins the ball game, and there'll be a bunch of points. Weather expected to be cold but clear in both championship settings. So I like the over in both games. Over under 224.5 passing yards for Bills quarterback Josh Allen. Another one, Wayne, where it is the same yardage on ESPNBet.com. Again, weather expected to be cold but clear. Slight winds, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Pretty good throwing conditions, if you ask me. I like the over on Josh Allen in this one. Wayne, what say you?
I'm going with the over on this one, and I'll even say that I believe he may get more than 250 yards.
Ooh. Larry, what you got? Over under 224.5.
I'm going over.
Josh Allen.
I'm going over. I think if they even got a shot to win, he's got to put 300 plus on the board.
Wow.
So, I'm going over.
Todd, same question to you, buddy. Over or under? This actually is one of the hardest ones.
Agreed.
No, this is really close. You guys all said over pretty quickly. You know what? No, man. I'm going to go under. Kansas City secondary is really good.
I just think it's going to come down to an offensive ball game in this one, as it has the previous time these two teams played. It was an offensive outburst. Playoffs and regular season, the last couple times these teams have played. So there's our pick six, folks. That wraps it up for that segment. Let's get to our final thoughts real quick. Wayne, kick us off, man.
Well, we have less than 25 days before the Daytona 500 green flag falls, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm sure the Memphis Police Department will be happy too, because I won't be racing around the 240 loop trying to get my NASCAR fix.
Larry, what you got?
If a center fielder had played for the New York Yankees and hit over 400 home runs, 10 gold gloves, over 1,000 hits, over 1,300 RBIs, no question, first ballot Hall of Famer. I have no idea how the baseball writers can look at the career of Andrew Jones and not call him a Hall of Famer. The way that they're voting here lately almost makes me think it's going to become the Hall of Very Good as opposed to becoming the Hall of Fame. No slight against anybody, and even the writer that was the what's a good politically correct way to say it? The unfortunate individual who thought that Ichiro wasn't a unanimous Hall of Famer.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it blows my mind. But and I'm not even speaking from a homer heart. I'm just speaking. If you put him on the Dodgers, he's a Hall of Famer. If he's in the Yankees, he's a Hall of Famer. You could take any of your blue blood teams in Major League Baseball, and Andrew's a Hall of Famer. Put the dude in. And it almost goes back to my thought about the steroid era guys. You need to start putting them in too, because you can't tell the history of Major League Baseball without telling the era that took place from 95 all the way to about 2010. So you need to start putting them guys in as well. And that's going to end my rant for the night.
I like it. Mine's on center fielder Andrew Jones, falls just short of the 75% threshold needed to be elected into Cooperstown. 66.2. We're getting close. He's got 2 years left. You can sit back and relax for a season and a half, Larry, because he will be in on his 10th and final year, maybe even next year, because the Hall of Fame class is not nearly as good as Billy Wagner, Suzuki, and Sabathia. I think You look at a couple of the years, I think that's part of the reason why Andrew Jones was so low, because you had a couple of these first ballot Hall of Famers coming in here. But look, I think he'll get in within his last final 2 votes. Wagner jumped from 68% to 73% to 82.5% to get in. Jones has jumped up his last few years as well, from 58 to 61 to now 66. So I think next year you get about 6 or 8 people that jumps up. Then the next year you get about 6 or 8 more. That puts him at the 75% threshold. I do see Andrew Jones getting in, but I will have to say this. When you hit 1-something, 215, and 240 in a very shortened season the last 3 years, he fell off a map offensively. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to hold that against him. But again, I will admit, I think he gets in the next year. If not this next cycle, I think he will definitely get in on his 10th and final ballot, just like Billy Wagner, the former Brave there. So to Andrew Jones' final thoughts. Let's try and get that man in the Hall of Fame. Arguably, in my opinion, I think he is the greatest defensive center fielder of all time. Todd, you're closing us out tonight, man. What you got?
Just made my point for me, JJ. He won't get in. 2007, 222. 2008, 158. 09, 214. 10, 230. 11, 247. And 12, 197. He did play 2 seasons for the Yankees and 1 for the Dodgers. You guys know that. I don't think he'll get in because of that. And one more I want to add. Man, I tell you what, you got to admire what the Los Angeles Dodgers are doing. I could only dream that my favorite baseball team would go out of their way to try to put together the best team in Major League Baseball year after year after year. Now, it doesn't guarantee them a shot to repeat, but I tell you what, they got a shot, and it's a good one. And I tell you what, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, if they all came back today, they'd all want to play for the Los Angeles Dodgers, especially Babe Ruth, who left the Red Sox for the Yankees. Why? Show me the money. That's it.
Great final thoughts for everybody. Folks, you can catch us all at ATL Prime Sports. If you like the content, give us a like, a thumbs up, a review on Apple or Spotify. It would really help us out. We do this thing for fun, and we do it for you. For Wayne in Memphis, Larry in Adairsville, Todd in Woodstock, I'm JJ right here in Lilburn, Georgia. As always, everybody, get you one, and we'll see you next week.